Allan Hirsch Advisors, creating aha moments, presents Aha Business Podcasts. We provide opportunities to discover information to help you run your business and guide your decision making. The more you know, the better decisions you make. For more information, log on to allanhirschadvisors.com. I'm your host, Allan Hirsch. Attention business owners. Has your business suffered financially from COVID-19? If so, let us help. I'm Allan Hirsch, a member of Business Coaches Assembled under a grant from the Small Business Breakthrough Executive Team. Our mission is to help business owners who have seen their revenues negatively impacted by 20% or more due to the virus. We can help you recover $50,000 to $70,000 or more of your lost revenue over the next 90 to 120 days. For more information, go to www.ahaonlinelearning.com to receive my book, 45-Minute Breakthroughs. That's go to www.ahaonlinelearning.com. Welcome to today's podcast. My guest today is Holly Sullenger. She's Dr. Holly Speaks, and it's not Dr. Speaks, it's Dr. Holly. She speaks.
That's right.
She asked me to do that because too many people say, hi, Dr. Speaks. But anyway.
That's right.
So my first question to every guest, what motivates you to get up in the morning and go to work?
Oh my goodness, that's such a great question. I am absolutely passionate. I've always been somebody who loves to learn. And I am absolutely passionate about helping others learn, especially if it helps them work smarter rather than harder, especially if I love it when my people that I work with get those, and I know this is going to kind of impinge on your brand, but get those aha moments, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And or the light bulb moments, I call them both. But when my corporate people are like, oh my gosh, this is going to save me hours and hours of time. That's what I'm passionate about. That's what gets me up every single morning, knowing that I can make a difference like that and that I can help people feel more comfortable with what they're doing.
That's great. So, how did you get started in this?
Yeah, so my dad was my hero all of my childhood and adult life. He found out early on that I was terrified to speak in public. And he actually found out, I guess I was about 19 and I was in college, and he heard me telling my sister I was going to skip a speech class because I knew I could make it up at the end when only the chickens would be in the room. And my dad whipped around the corner and said, no daughter of mine is going to let anything get to them like that. And he said, you will be dressed and you will be standing outside the house by my car at 6:30 in the morning tomorrow morning, which was an ungodly statement to me. And I was like, is he going to give me away? Is he going to take me to the store and just hand me off? Or, what's going on? He actually started taking me to his Toastmasters group. So it was me, little 19-year-old me, and a whole bunch of executives my dad's age, male executives, all of them. And they all took me under their wing. And for 2 years, I had like 25 coaches that helped me learn to speak in public. And at the end of the 2 years, my college professors contacted me and they said, we want you to start teaching night classes because you have some knowledge no one else does. And I went ahead and told them I would do it, even though I was still terrified. I wanted to show the guys that I had learned something from them. And once I got past myself and the thought that it was all about me, and I started focusing on, oh, they really need this knowledge, my participants, and they're genuinely interested, and this is so important to them, then it became just real easy to get up and talk and make sure that I was trying to do the best job possible of getting the information across to them.
Yes, you're absolutely right. The biggest problem to overcome in public speaking is yourself.
Yes. And who would think that? But it's just all about, getting rid of that insecurity and learning that people are there to genuinely just hear what you have to say.
And it's one of those things that I always look at with my CEOs that I work with, yes. And it permeates so much, and it's fear. It's the fear, and I use the acronym false expectations appearing real.
Oh, I love that. Oh, Alan, that's fantastic. I may have to borrow that and I'll send royalties your way.
Fine. That's fine. But it's real. I mean, the false expectations of speaking in public,
Mhm.
it appears to be real.
Yes,
And it really, and it's everything that when people make decisions or don't make decisions, it's because of false expectations. They have no idea what the expectations are going to be.
yep, yep,
But they, in their own mind, they have false expectations, and it paralyzes them.
yes. And it did. I would turn red in the face. I would stammer and stutter. I would feel nauseous for days ahead of time. It was just all self-imposed torture.
Right. Uh, and now you don't torture yourself.
No,
Okay.
no.
So what do you speak about? And I know it's a number of things, and I want to try to focus mostly on leadership, because
Yes,
I think that's something that most business owners understand that they need. Most of them think they know it, and most of them don't.
correct. Well, in fact, the more recent number is that across the board, whether it's a large or small business, 52% of people that are promoted into positions of leadership don't feel that they're prepared for their new role. And that's a big number. That's over half.
Well, it
Uh,
reminds me of the Peter principle.
yes, yes, promoted to your own level of incompetence.
Confidence, right?
Exactly. That's but that's interesting. I've always done corporate training. So I've always worked with, and I worked the whole gamut of corporate training. I've worked with line workers and I've worked with C-suite individuals and every single point in between. And, you can be a line worker and be in charge of a line. You can be leading a line, and you need to have the same types of skills that a CEO or a CIO needs. So, there are some leadership truths that I have taught for years and years and years that people, once they figure them out, once they get them under their belt, they feel like they're really ready to go and help their team be successful.
You also need it as a parent.
Yes, you do. Oh my gosh, yes, you do. We need every bit of help we can
Great,
get as
a
parents.
great
Yes.
parenting
Yeah.
follows the same scenarios, the same points of view that leadership skills do, because
Right.
it's leading people. You're
Right.
educating your children, you're leading them, and it's the same principles.
Right. That's exactly right. And different people become different types of leaders. Everybody's personality shows through. And I think that's a beautiful thing. But if you have some of the basic tenets under your belt, then it becomes easier to lead as you naturally would be best at leading.
Right.
So one of the biggest topics I am asked to speak with to my leaders on a regular basis is just communication, how to communicate more effectively. That seems to be a big problem area for a lot of people in positions of leadership. And then, of course, another one would be basically team building, team forming. How do you get everybody on board and get them moving in the right direction? So those are two of my big areas.
So
And
what's the best way to communicate as a leader?
oh, that's there's no one best way. How's that for an answer? There's
Okay.
no one best way, but it's better. Obviously, in this day and age, especially, I see the people who are very transparent when they communicate seem to have the best results. So the leaders, even when it's hard, that can go ahead and communicate difficult issues and make sure that everybody is aware of them and there aren't rumors flying around because people think they know, but they don't. Those are the teams that I see getting ahead.
Mm-hmm. So, how do you, when you talk and you lecture to CEOs and their teams,
Mhm.
how do you try to get them to communicate better?
That's a really good question. So, first of all, I never lecture, which is interesting. I love to think of my style of training as very interactive. And
Okay.
especially with C suite people, they have as much to give as they have to get, which I find wonderfully fascinating. But I usually will have them work out scenarios. So we talk about, and I mean, just communication 101, the fact that nonverbal communication makes up 93% of every communicated message, usually blows their mind. So when you're texting or emailing, you have a really good chance of missing getting that message sent across properly because people can't see your reaction that you're
Well,
having.
and one of the things I try to keep my emails so short, to
Yes,
the point,
yes,
not extensive emails, because particularly with Zoom now, I want to be able to see them.
yes. And that's an important part of, I've had this discussion so many times this past year. Communicating in a virtual environment involves a lot more than communicating in person. You have to remember that you're kind of a flat two-dimensional, and you can see me using my hands. It's important that you still use your body language even though you're on a TV screen, because it's very helpful to make sure that that communication gets across properly.
Yeah. So what are the 93% of communication that is body language, so forth? So how does that get divided out?
Yeah, so it's 55% are the actual gestures, and then 38% is tone of voice. And of course, again, if you're doing email or text, the tone of voice is missing, as well as the different gestures. So again, this world of virtual really does help us out, I think, a lot more so than some of those older methods of communication that we've used for a while. This is also, by the way, very generational. I know that I have he's a very young millennial son who refuses to check email because it's just not the place where people work anymore. And he's in IT, he has an amazing job, and his whole entire company uses Slack and Discord to communicate with each other. So two brand new communication channels. And they're short and sweet, but the interesting thing is not only do they use those, they actually get online with each other on a regular basis so they see each other. And I think that a lot of our millennials are realizing that that's super important.
So they're using Teams, things like that, Zoom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm asked, which one is Zoom is still by far and away. Zoom got out of the starting gate ahead of everybody else. And they're still enjoying a lot more market share than the others, but Microsoft Teams is closing in, and it seems to be the preferred method that a lot of my companies are using now.
Yeah, because it's tied in with the Microsoft 365,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
it's supposedly easier to work with through the interfaces.
Yep. Yep. And I do about 6 of one and half a dozen of the other when I'm doing my
Yeah.
training. So, and
Okay.
speaking.
So when you talk about communication, and then you talk about leadership skills. So what's important for a leader to know about leadership skills?
Well, first of all, I don't think you can ever say that you have ever succeeded in gaining all the leadership skills that you needed. I think it's an ongoing process. I think it's something that you develop over the course of a lifetime. And I think on a regular basis, we have to examine the skills that we do have and revisit them and perhaps change them up somewhat. I did a keynote yesterday on leading for innovation within organizations. And that's the name of the game nowadays is being innovative. And if you think about it, you can be innovative every day. If you just look at every single service or product that your company is involved in and say, how can it be different, better? Ask yourself a million questions about it. You can go in an innovative direction. But every once in a while, we get tired as leaders and we find ourselves saying, it's fine the way that it is. We've always done it that way. And that in my world is the kiss of death. So
Well, I think if you should have been working with Kodak
yes, that's a
20,
really good
30 years
example.
ago when they invented the digital camera,
Yep.
and never thought it would pan out.
Yeah, exactly. And there are many, many stories of organizations like that that are no more
Right.
because they just decided to rest on their laurels. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, a business that never changes,
Right.
never adapts, is a business that goes backwards.
Exactly. And so that's one of the big qualities I think that I see in effective leaders. They're very adaptable. I'll give you a really good example here. Obviously, the pandemic. We're now a year into the pandemic, and one of my really big companies that sells. I'll save the name to protect the innocent, but they sell beverages around the globe. Let's put it that way. Their person that's responsible for helping them stay current and stay ahead of the competition called me a week into the stay-at-home order and said, call me crazy, but I don't think this is going to end anytime soon. I want to keep everything I have on the books with you, and I want you to tell me that we can do this virtually. And I said, absolutely. Absolutely. That's an example, though, of somebody who can kind of read the writing on the wall and say, what we've been doing in the past has been fun. Having somebody come in and doing the in-person thing is always fun, but we're not going to be able to do that right now. So how can I keep my organization strong? How can I keep my people happy? How can I give them the tools that they need to do their jobs? And that person pivoted very quickly, and thank goodness took me right along with them.
Well, I mean, I did the same thing. I was doing a local radio show, and I pivoted right away. And in June, by the time I did some research and got it, I was back doing podcasts in the first week in June.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I adapted Zoom right away. Now I got clients in South Africa, Scotland, England, Utah.
Here.
You?
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say same here, because one of the many silver linings of the pandemic, and I know it was very negative for a lot of people, but one of the many silver linings is that it eliminated boundaries. I'm like you. I'm all over the globe now.
Right. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So what are some, I know there are some, there've been authors out there. It's interesting. There's more books, according to the studies I've seen, there are more books written on leadership than on sex.
Yep.
And you think it's the other way around, but it's not.
I love that.
So with some of the books on leadership, which ones do you recommend? And why?
So I was looking around. Here we go. I get asked that quite a little bit. And since I'm in my home office, I can do this. This one is called Tribe of Mentors, and it's by Timothy Ferriss. And it's funny, I've read all the more recent ones. I've read Traction and, all the big ones that are out there. But this one I like. Now, if I turn it this way, you'll notice it would make a nice booster seat for small children. It is huge. But the interesting thing about this, Timothy Ferriss interviewed tons of leaders and people who are at the top of their game and asked them all the same questions. And every single chapter is about 4 to 6 pages long. That's it. And it's their responses, these leaders' responses to his questions. So you can find out from, I don't remember how many leaders it is, but it's a bazillion leaders in here.
Well, that's interesting. One of my, I've not seen that book.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite is just went out of my mind. The Leadership Challenge.
Oh, that's a good book.
Because they did the same thing. They've been doing it since '88. They've interviewed over 80,000 leaders around the world. And they boiled it down to 5 basic qualities that great leaders around the world have.
Yep. And that's pretty much the premise of this book. We know that very successful people do read. They keep up with their professions and with their industries. But we also know that very successful people don't have a lot of time to read. So I love the fact that I could pick this up and I could read one chapter. And if I really paid attention to it, I gained a lot of wisdom, but then I was able to also move into my day. Mm-hmm. So, and some days if I had a little extra time, I could read 2 or 3 chapters.
Right.
But I fully intend there. It's so full of good ideas and good information and truths and examples that I want to go back and read it again. So I know my that millennial kid came over one night for dinner and he said, "Dear Lord, are you reading that book?"
No, you're rereading the book.
Yeah, exactly.
Rereading the book.
I said, let me just share with you. It's easy to read.
Well, why don't we take a break? And
Sure.
when we come back, we're going to continue the conversation with Holly Sullenger of Doctors Holly Speaks. So
Perfect.
Come back. We'll enjoy that additional conversation. I'm Allan Hirsch of Allan Hirsch Advisors, and this is AHA Business Podcast.
Hi, Rick Dempsey here. As a former Oriole and Series MVP, I know a lot about winning and championship teams. Today, I am happy to tell you about my award-winning web design and internet marketing team, Adventure Web Interactive. For over 2 decades, many of Maryland's most successful firms have chosen Adventure Web as their strategic partner for web design and online marketing. I can tell you from using them personally, their search engine optimization and social media programs have saved their clients tens of thousands over the traditional pay-per-click digital agency. Visit adventurewebinteractive.com and listen to what clients such as Hercules Fence, TriStar Electric, ABC Rental, Rhine Landscaping, Markdown's Office Furniture, and many more highly successful firms have to say. And don't forget to tell them Rick Dempsey sent you.
Strengthen, protect, and preserve your retirement nest egg. Scott Garceau here for the Stephen J. Sless Group, Baltimore's reverse mortgage specialist. Reverse mortgages have evolved to become a viable retirement tool. Enjoy retirement without monthly mortgage payments, improve cash flow, pay off debt, and stretch retirement savings. Stephen and his team can offer strategies to make housing wealth work for you. If you're 62 or older, learn if a reverse mortgage could help. Visit reversebaltimore.com.
An equal housing opportunity lender. This is not a commitment to lend. Stephen J. Sless, NMLS 298581. PRMI NMLS 3094.
Welcome back to the show. My guest today is Holly Sullenger of Dr. Holly Speaks, and that again is Dr. Holly, not Dr. Speaks. It's a great tagline. But thank you for being here. We were talking about leadership, and you came up with your great book, the Mentors. And I mentioned the Leadership Challenge. So what do these books teach us about leadership skills?
I think one of the reasons I like this book especially well is, as I mentioned earlier, nobody leads the same way. People always have their own brand of leadership, if you will. And the learning never stops for leaders. There's always something more that you can find out about and add to your bag of tricks that makes you an even more effective leader than you were before you heard it. So I love the fact that, and I'm like you, Allan, I read a lot of books and I talk to a lot of people that are in executive levels. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard pieces of information that have just absolutely changed the way that I've done business, as well as others in the room. Well, so there's constant room for growth.
Well, when I meet with clients, I mean, I talked about last week's podcast. He and I both talked about how much we learn from our clients.
Yes, I agree.
We're not just there to teach and advise and hold people accountable. We're also learning, because everyone's different and we all learn. And it makes us lifelong learners.
I have a whole series that I have been talking about quite a bit lately, that I got from one of the very first female leaders at North Carolina State University. I was fortunate enough to interview her a few years back, and she told me about all the trials and tribulations that she had being in that position over the years. And of course, at the time that I was speaking to her, she had retired, but she still had a professor emeritus position that she filled at the college. And I finally said to her, I said, Pat, you're blowing me away with all of these seeming obstacles that you've had to overcome over the years. How in the world did you do it? And I'll have to set this up. She's very Southern, very small, beautiful, dainty woman, very, very Southern. And she pulled herself up and looked at me and she said, "Why, Holly, I owe it all to my internal board of directors." And I hope I did her accent justice there, but I was like, "You're what?" "You hired a board of directors?" And she said, "Oh no, some people didn't even know they were on my board of directors." And her whole thing was she had, throughout the course of her life, and she said she thought everybody had been taught this as a child. Her mother taught her that one person alone is not enough. And her mother had said, when you find that you are not well versed in an area, or that is not an area you're comfortable in, or that is not an area that you have a talent or skill in, then you need to find someone and pull them alongside you so that they can make you a stronger person in that area. And she learned, I mean, makes all the sense in the world. Look at the heads of our countries have cabinets and boards of directors all around them. It's not one person. We think of it that way, but it's actually a whole team of people. And that's what she had done her entire life. So she said, if I was all mired in the politics of the organization and I didn't know what to do, I had somebody that I could go to. And she said, sometimes I had covert members. I told them that they were on my board and I told them I would barter with them. I would help them if they would help me. And sometimes they were, overt members. And sometimes they were covert members. Sometimes they never knew. I would just go to them and say, I have this issue. Can you help me? And she said that allowed me to fire people without having to hurt them. I thought that was such a great idea. And I actually started researching the different types of people that all of us should really have around us if we want to get to that next level of success. And if you think about it, this is what good leaders do. They surround themselves not with yes men or yes women, not with people that are going to lift them up, but people that are going to let them be more effective as leaders. It's huge.
Yeah. Well, to me, that's why business owners need coaches, the same way great athletes all have coaches.
I agree.
Somebody that's not necessarily, I mean, they're being paid, but not necessarily on their payroll.
Yes.
To be honest with them.
Yes. And to challenge them.
And to challenge them and to hold them accountable.
Yes.
Because
accountability partners are a huge part of that. Yeah.
Right. So, with leadership, that, the leadership at the top is lonely.
Yes.
And the larger you get, the more and more lonely you get.
Absolutely. And that's where having those connections becomes super imperative, super important. When you're at the top, and you really need to have advisors that you can turn to, trusted advisors that you can go to with difficult decisions and say, this is the decision, this is what I'm thinking, what is your input? Very important.
Right. And sometimes they're not even, if it's a public company, they're not even on the board.
Correct. Correct.
I mean, I sit on a couple of nonprofit boards, and if I were executive director, I wouldn't be listening to those boards if I.
Yeah. And I'm on a couple of boards as well. And it's interesting. Some of the executive directors are very involving with the boards and some are not. So.
Right. It's lonely at the top, and then they need advisors, they need helpers. And they need people to be honest and open with them.
And good leaders realize that too. I know a lot of leaders, they do come with a certain amount of ego because they've done a lot to get in the position that they've been, that they've aspired to, I guess.
Right.
But you've got to be able to say at some point, one person is not enough. It takes multiple people. It takes a team of people to really get where you need to go, to really take the organization where it needs to be.
Well, and that then involves delegating.
It does. Delegating is a huge part of leadership. Yes. And that's probably one of the hardest things that leaders have to do.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, you get to certain plateaus unless you're willing to, in business, willing to delegate or release some of the work that you do. You're not going anywhere further.
Exactly.
You're going to go parallel or go down.
Yep. Because
you're not going to be able to grow without delegating responsibilities, and leadership is delegating.
It really is. One of my clients in Canada, another huge company in Canada, recently spoke to the leader there, and he's a younger person for being in a leadership position. And he was kind of going through a grieving process at the time that I spoke to him. And he said, I used to do this over here and I did it really well and I really enjoyed it. But I realized once I was given the leadership position that now needed to be done by someone else. And he said, I miss it and I wish I could do it sometimes, but I realize I can't. I'm much more effective doing this over here.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very mature of him to say that, you know,
Yeah. It's true.
reality.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
reality. The only thing that is limited is time.
Right. 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 That's a beautiful saying right there.
You only have 24 hours in a day. And if you use all 24 hours, you'll be walking, walking, in your dreams a few
Yes,
days later. So
that's
you've got
true.
to have, you've got to have the free time. You've got to be able to recharge your battery. You can't do it all yourself.
And honestly, as much as people get into the thought of enjoying where they are, a good leader is also constantly thinking about succession planning. So if you're not allowing people, if you're not delegating and allowing people to try their hand at some of the things going on, then once there is a need for a leader, there's not a good candidate. So I think succession planning is a huge part of, why we delegate.
Well, even with startups and their partners,
Mhm.
if you don't figure out what's going to happen and put a little buy sell agreement in place,
Mhm.
you could end up being a partner with your partner's spouse
Exactly. Who may know nothing at all about the business.
and
Yeah.
not care about the business, and all
Right.
they want is the money.
Right. Right.
Or multiple generation businesses that have 10 children along the generations, that all they want is the dividends.
Right. And that does happen. That does
What
happen.
happens regularly.
Yep.
Now, I have a client that's that way, uh, and it's he's the CEO, and it drives him crazy. All they want is dividends, and they
Wow.
they won't let the business grow.
Mm. And that's challenging. That's complicated. Yeah, it's having that insight up front to say these things could happen. How can I create contingency plans that are going to be beneficial not only to me but to the organization? That's a huge thing, Allan. It really is.
So okay, so um, what else do you speak about? We talked about leadership. We talked about uh, 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 communications.
Mhm.
So what else do you talk about?
So I have three content areas that I speak on. So leadership is obviously one of them, and it's one that I do constantly. It's probably the one I do the most. But followed by professional development, which often, again, kind of falls into what we were just talking about, succession planning. How do we get people ready to aspire to leadership positions?
Right.
If you're a smart organization, you're working on that before there's a need for those people. And then the third area is technology. I'm an unusual person. I started my whole career in technology. And I now am doing a lot of work with companies to try to keep them current. I did how to thrive in a virtual environment, how to lead a virtual team. Those topics were some of my biggest topics last year. And so we had one version for the leaders and one version for the team members, and the two of them dovetailed together, that particular topic. And that again revolves around technology because hello, that's what we have to use to survive right now,
Right.
during the pandemic. But I've
And
also done a lot with data analytics. That's the buzzword that all kinds of leaders are using right now. We collect, and our organizations collect, and our government collects data on everything. And data is absolutely useless unless we know how to commingle it and prepare it and create great visualizations so that our decision makers have an easier time making those decisions.
so those are the three things that you work on.
Mhm.
And it sounds like you have an exciting practice and
I
you
love it.
enjoy what you do.
Mhm.
I want to thank you for being a guest on the podcast. How can our listeners reach you?
Good. Well, yeah, I appreciate so much being here. And again, it's Dr. Holly Speaks is my moniker, right? It's Dr. Holly Speaks, all one word, at gmail.com. And my website is www.drhollyspeaks.com. If you're looking for me on social, I also have Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and I'm missing one of them. I have a presence just about everywhere. And
Okay.
it's always Dr. Holly Speaks.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Holly, uh,
Yeah.
who doesn't speak, well, who speaks, but not her last name.
Right.
I enjoyed this immensely, and I look forward to staying in touch with you. I'm Allan Hirsch of Allan Hirsch Advisors, your host. To reach me, visit my website, www.ahaonlinelearning.com, and you can register to get my book, 40-Minute Breakthroughs, for free. You can listen to the podcast of past shows wherever you get your podcast by subscribing to AHA Business Podcast. You may email me at Allan at ALLANHIRSH advisors.com. I'm Allan Hirsch, and this has been an AHA Business Podcast. Thanks for listening. Take care.